HannaTalk.
What's going on, everybody? Simon here. Welcome back to my channel and welcome back to HannaTalk, the segment on my channel where I do interviews with voice actors, announcements, reviews, and all the stuff in the world of pop culture. So for today's video, I'm going to be taking a look at Daredevil Born Again. But before we get into that, I'd like to say one thing. Happy 10 years, everybody. That's right. It's been officially 10 years since I started my channel. I honestly can't believe it. Um, As many people will know, over the last 10 years, I've been doing interviews on my channel with voice actors. That's something I'm going to continue to do on the channel. Yeah, just to mention, of course, that what's going to happen going forward on the channel and everything, now that we've hit the 10-year mark, I'll continue to do the interviews with the voice actors, but also, as everyone will know, on my Facebook page, I've been doing, of course, the written reviews, the announcement post, basically everything in kind of a written format. But as I'm be posting this video, all that stuff is now going to go into video format instead, including stuff that I've done in the past, like previous reviews, previous announcements, just taking into consideration all the stuff that's happened over the last few years since I posted all that stuff. But let me know in the comments below, what has been your favorite moment from across all the stuff I've done on my channel, whether it's been an interview that I've done, whether it's been a particular guest that I've had on, any of that sort of stuff. But now that we've got that out of the way, let's get right into Daredevil. Now, as many people will know, today is the premiere for Daredevil Born Again. That's right. 4th of March is when is when the first two episodes drop, almost when it's Netflix mode for a moment there. But the first two episodes from Daredevil Born Again are going to drop today, and then it's going to drop on a weekly basis. So it's going to be 9 episodes in total for season one. So this video is just going to be giving off my overall thoughts on Daredevil Born Again, not so much talking about the behind the scenes or going into a full-on review for the first two episodes. I haven't seen them yet, but I am planning to get into watching all the episodes when they all drop at the end of the last, or when the last episode drops. Sorry, excuse me. And then I'll get into a full-on review talking about it. But let me know in the comments below, how will you watch Daredevil Born Again? Are you going to watch it one episode per week, or are you going to watch it when all the episodes drop at the end of when the last episode is going to release? Me personally, I'm going to wait till all the episodes drop. But just to talk about that for a moment, just based on all the information that has dropped, and this is just giving off as I said, my overall thoughts on the whole thing, based on some of the information that we got from like the showrunners, from the cast and crew, particularly Charlie Cox and Vincent D'Onofrio. This is what has been said about that. So I'm just going to read off a few quotes here that particularly came from the directors of Daredevil Born Again, which have been Justin, and I apologize if I mispronounce the words here, if I get the names completely mixed up, Justin Benson and Alan Moorhead, who many people remember as the directors for Loki and Moon Knight. And I would highly recommend both those shows. They're absolutely fantastic. Now, here are just some of the quotes that they've talked about or they've spoken about with regards to Daredevil. So this is what they've had to say about it. We are huge fans of especially the Frank Miller run and Born Again, obviously being a reference to the Daredevil Born Again storyline. We're huge fans of so many things to do with that character and just so many actors we respect on that show. Benson also adds, I think growing up, if I said growing up that I was a huge comic book guy, I would be a poser. However, I was somewhat of a comic book guy, and Daredevil was one of those characters that I was really into as a child. So there's always that aspect of it, that thing you can't deny. It's like you brought into your DNA when you were very little. So that obviously speaks on the fact that they're huge fans of the property, and obviously mentioned Born Again being a reference to the Daredevil Born Again storyline, which I've actually done a written review for, and I would highly recommend as a good starting point for anybody that's watched the original Daredevil show and looking to go into the comic books. That's one of the best Daredevil stories of all time, and for good reason. It is Frank Miller at the end of the day. But going into that, the reason why they've called the show Daredevil Born Again, not just meant to be a reference to the Daredevil Born Again storyline, even though they're not adapting that particular storyline for the first season, they may decide to adapt it later down the track, but we've already had that as the basis for season three in the original Netflix show. But it's meant to be a reference to the Frank Miller story, but also a reference to Daredevil officially coming into the MCU, like almost being born again in a way, because the show's been off the air since the end of season three. At least that's my own personal view on it. But now let's get into the next bit of information that everyone is wondering about is the show meant to be canon or part of the continuity of the MCU? Because that was the big question that was on everyone's mind. Since Charlie Cox, Vincent D'Onofrio made their appearances in the MCU, like would they become we knew they'd be coming back eventually. There was no question about it. But the question was, would they be the same exact versions we saw previously? Would they be variants of that? What's going on with that? It was revealed by the head of Marvel Television, Windenbaum, sorry, excuse me, who this is what he had to say about it. And he used X-Men 97, which if you haven't watched that show, would highly recommend it. It's fantastic. An amazing show for the original X-Men fans, but also as a good starting point for anyone looking to get into the X-Men series. So this is what he had to say about Daredevil Born Again and using X-Men 97 as the comparison for that, saying Daredevil is incredible. It's similar in some ways to X-Men 97 because it's reviving something that the fans love, but it's taking it in a new direction. These characters have matured, the universe is different than it was, things have changed, society's changed. Matt and Wilson have changed, and the characters are going to collide in ways we've never seen before. It's no longer enough to try to murder each other. There's a whole game of politics at play. So, just reading from that one quote is obviously meant to reference what they did in X-Men 97 with them saying, yes, the original animated show is in continuity of X-Men 97, but they also wrote it in a way to anybody who never watched X-Men the animated series to go into X-Men 97 with completely fresh eyes. So that's the way I'm interpreting that quote there, and also goes back to what the cast and crew have been talking about, saying that yeah, definitely watch the first three seasons if you want to, but you can also jump into Born Again without having seen anything else. At least that's my interpretation of it. But also in the fact of what's going on in the context of Daredevil Born Again with Fisk becoming mayor and Vince and I was about to say Charlie Cox, Matt Murdock, like being a lawyer and slowly integrating themselves back into becoming Daredevil and Kingpin again. So now that's where things start to get a bit complicated. Next big thing that was on everyone's mind is will the series go as hardcore as it was during the original show? Because everyone thinks Disney Plus, they think, Disney princesses, they think Mickey Mouse, as you would when you're thinking about with Disney, or what you think about, or what many people would think about when they think of Disney. Let me just point this out here. Just because Disney has been known for like the princesses and the Mickey Mouse and all that kind of stuff, doesn't mean that that is all they're known for. They're known for other stuff too. It's just because of the history of Disney as a company, as a company as a whole, from when they started with the Mickey Mouse cartoons and then all the Disney cartoons that came after that and the family friendly of it all. But that's not all they're built around. So just to back that up, this is what Charlie Cox had to say about this. He said the thing that we kept talking about was this show has had the success that it had and has appealed to a very specific demographic because it's one of the few superhero shows that's so dark and sinister at times. Vincent and I both felt if you lose that, you're at risk of losing the identity of our show. So we really pushed for the show to remain geared towards an older audience and not dumbed down to kind of capture a wider net of people. I think in some ways it's even darker than a lot of stuff we've done in the past. And also to back that up, this is what Vincent D'Onofrio had to say about it. There's a world in which you might think that if the show kept running, we'd be in this place eventually or something like it, but we've gone further in the darkness, the action, the nastiness. So that kind of confirms in the fact that Vincent D'Onofrio and Charlie Cox were the ones that were pushing to go back to the scale of the original Netflix show, even beyond that as well. And based on the trailer, which I've watched numerous times, it is fantastic. It definitely has given me hope for Daredevil as a series. Not that it hasn't before, of course, but I try to go into everything with little to no expectations for what to expect and just be surprised and just wait and see what happens with certain things. But of course, you can also thank Kevin Feige for getting the chance to oversee everything. And I just want to mention this briefly as well, in that people think, oh, what happened with the MCU the MCU is ruined because of all the stuff that's come about, yada yada yada. Let me make it clear. Marvel had no choice in the matter with all those projects that came out. If you want to blame somebody on that, blame the people that were in charge of Disney for all those decisions, because not just Disney, but pretty much everyone in the world struggled with the pandemic and after the pandemic, particularly a lot of the really big entertainment companies. But Disney in particular, or the people that were in charge of Disney, sorry, excuse me, just to make it more specific, in what had to force Marvel to create so much content in a short period of time, particularly when Disney Plus was getting released. And not just for Marvel, but for Star Wars and for Disney themselves. I think we all know what happened with that. And just to be clear, I've actually enjoyed all the stuff that's come out. Some stuff a little bit more than others, but when I say it's a disaster, no, anything but a disaster. But do I feel like they've hit a bit of a creative slump? Yes. Do I feel like they're heading back in the right direction? All those things? Yes. But again, that's just my opinion. I'm entitled to that, as you're entitled to your own opinion as well. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. But this is just to follow up on those extra things with what Charlie Cox and Vincent D'Onofrio have said. This is what this is what I think either Charlie Cox or I think it might have been Vincent D'Onofrio, it might have been Charlie Cox who said this quote. The level of violence is way up there for a Marvel Disney show. I don't think there's anything else, even in the ballpark. There's a moment in this that is just absolutely batshit crazy and way past anything Netflix ever did. And to follow up on that, this is what Vincent D'Onofrio said. There are some things in the show that go much further than on the original show. There's one thing in particular my character does that I can't believe made it into the cut. So that should give you a pretty strong idea for how violent Born Again is going to get, even beyond the original Netflix show. And actually, just to also follow up on that as well, is what I think it might have been the showrunners or it might have been the directors who spoke about this, who said this. One of the reasons why we're in love with the original Netflix show is it's an achievement in somehow making these masked vigilantes so human that you feel every drop of blood. The other tradition of the show, obviously of the brutality, is that it can get gruesome. It's important to us to show that these very human, flawed people, even the antagonists, even Wilson Fisk in season one of the Netflix show, when we meet him, is just a guy falling in love. All these people, the way their pain and their ego, or their sense of justice, when it manifests in violence, the violence itself is grotesque. And also, just to follow up on that, here's the next quote they said following up on that one, which says, there are two things happening simultaneously, where as technicians, as filmmakers, we're impressed where these practical effects get done right. And that's fun. But as storytellers, we felt really lucky that showing the grotesque was meaningful, that it was saying something, that it was saying, good guy or bad guy, this violence is wrong and it's gross. And yet it's still entertaining. And again, as filmmakers, we've seen some practical effects on the show that we literally didn't know were possible. They even had something to say about the final episode of the series, of the season, sorry, which says, yeah, you'll see something in the final episode and you'll know what we're talking about. You'll be like, oh yeah, got it, guys. So that should give people a very strong idea for how much effort they're really putting into the show, considering all the behind the scenes stuff that was happening with what was going to happen with the show previously. I'll get into a separate video about that, or I'll actually explain that during my review video, just talking about all the behind the scenes stuff that was happening originally with Daredevil Born Again, effectively the reboot of the reboot. Well, this one being the reboot of the reboot. That was almost like a time travel explainer. Anyway, now this is just now here are some quotes that came directly from Dario Scatapane, and I apologize if I mispronounced the name there, which explains about what the show was originally going to be, which says it had been conceived as more of a legal procedural, and we really brought it back towards an action-based New York crime story. The real trick was to have the DNA of the old Netflix show and then push it forward into something very new. So, so you have to imagine if they'd have gotten the chance to do a full-blown, if they'd done Daredevil Born Again as more of a Law and Order legal procedural kind of thing, I can already hear the music for Law and Order playing in the background. So let me know in the comments below on that. Would you have preferred Daredevil Born Again had it been done as a legal procedure, very Law and Order-esque kind of approach, or would you prefer to closer to the original Netflix show? I think it would have been interesting to see it as a Law and Order kind of thing, but personally, with without the Daredevil aspects to it, you're missing one part of what makes Daredevil who he is. Next thing that the showrunner, who by the way is one of the writers from the original Punisher TV show, so that should give you a pretty good idea, and helps in the fact that John Bernthal is coming back as the Punisher, as we saw during the trailers. This is what he had to say about the original show before the reboot happened, which says quite a bit lived. The thing is, and I think Sana can speak to this, Sana obviously being a reference to one of the executive producers on the show, who said they had that time during the strike to take a look at what they had, and those 6 episodes were super solid. I saw them way later. They were super solid, but the issue was bringing up the themes and feelings that we loved from the old show and context. I'll say that over and over again. That first episode of is the one that takes us into the run, and we needed to have those first 15 minutes of that first episode to set the stage. What we ended up doing was the amount of additional material was essentially 3 episodes worth and then quite a bit of interstitial, I apologize if I mispronounced that word there, material inside the body of the middle six. I feel like it was mostly enhancement and it was really bringing out the stuff that we loved a little more. Fisk and Matt, a little more action, pathos. The show was there. It wanted to be something. We just had to do some things to draw that out. So you can kind of see the thought process that was going when he saw the original show and was like, no, we need, we need to fix this. We need to bring it back to the way it's meant to be, and that much more. Again, going back to the whole X-Men 97 of it all, Sarah Amanat, who, again, one of the executive producers on the show, said this. And again, credit to Matt Corman and Chris Ord, who were the previous showrunners under the original version of Daredevil Born Again, said, those writers, some of which stayed on with us in this new writer's room, really gave us also a naturalistic and real-world New York as well. And that's what we really wanted to build upon. But yes, as Dario said, it was elements where we wanted to pull on threads. We wanted to make it a bit darker and more intense and offer that connective tissue that just wasn't quite there before. But that connected tissue to the previous show, of course, with our returning characters and telling the drama of who they are almost 7 to 8 to 10 years later. So, so that's kind of them also using the landscape of New York as a part of the story, as like a character in and of itself. There was even an interview with Charlie Cox, Vincent D'Onofrio, and the showrunners and the directors talking about the landscape of New York. I'll post a link in the description below for if you want to watch that. Now, next big thing that everyone's wondering about is where does this show fit in the timeline? Is it meant to be straight after season 3? Is it meant to be set like, I don't know, after the 5-year time jump? Well, one actor that explained all that is Wilson Bethel, aka Bullseye. This is what he had to say about it, which says, yeah, I mean, Charlie sort of alluded to it, but I think one of the things that's interesting is, I mean, maybe it's different on a sitcom or something like that, but if you're on a show for over a period of time and the characters are aging together sort of in real time, and and if the show is well written and the writers are sort of responding to that reality transpiring, the wrinkles of their hair, etc., then in theory, the character is evolving in a way, whether or not the show was on the air. So this is what he had to say about where the show fits in continuity, saying this. So there's kind of all this little funny thing, stepping back after 5 years where Born Again will pick up with that amount of time having transpired. The show doesn't pick up the day after we last saw it, talking about the events of season 3. It picks up 5 years later. And so, in theory, these are characters who have all lived 5 years of life and all the twists and turns that you take in the meantime. So, whether or not even those stories are necessarily on screen, there's just that little bit extra of life in there, which I think is, as an actor, it gives you an opportunity to bring whatever your own journey has been in that time, and they sort of get a little longer in the tooth. So that's him confirming that the show is going to be set 5 years after the events of Daredevil Born Again. Because I know that was the big question with the continuity. They obviously referenced that during the original Netflix show, saying, like in Jessica Jones, go after the big green guy with the flag waver. I was never even there. That was sort of them setting the stage, saying, yeah, it's been in the MCU. It just took Marvel Studios to basically say that outright. And And now, of course, saying that after the 5 year time jump, and I'm really hoping, and I'm kind, or maybe expecting this during the show, just like what they did with the Echo series, how we saw Kingpin, Daredevil, is that we explore like what happened during those 5 years before the over the course of this of the first season. But we're gonna have to wait and see when the show drops. Next big thing that Wilson Bethel was talking about was playing Bullseye in Born Again. This is what he had to say about that, which is spoke of Bullseye as somebody who can get pretty unhinged, and that conveying Bullseye's intensity with a mask on is a little bit more challenging than otherwise. And also, he got asked by Colin Farrell's performance as the character, saying, I mean, whether he'd be able to out crazy Bullseye or Colin Farrell's version of Bullseye. I mean, it's certainly my goal. Let's put it that way. My goal in life is to out crazy Colin Farrell. So so it's actually pretty funny for him to say, yeah, I want to be able to go beyond what Colin Farrell did with his performance. Colin Farrell, in terms of his performance as Bullseye, was fantastic. But I definitely think Wilson Bethel is the definitive version of the character. Like he really played that level of craziness, like you'd expect from Bullseye in the context of the comic books, or from the other iterations of the character, in a slightly real world kind of aspect, as you'd expect with the Netflix show. But now that he's in the MCU, I think we can see him start to get a little bit more unhinged. And if you want to check up on a really awesome like Colin Farrell performance where he definitely goes nuts and actually an amazing performance and nothing to do with Marvel Studios is the Penguin from Matt Reeves' Batman universe. It is fantastic. But now the big question that was on everyone's mind is with regards to Charlie Cox's Daredevil appearing in the MCU, especially in the She-Hulk episode, this is what the showrunner had to say about this. Marvel has a master plan, and what you're doing causes ripple effects. I would pitch stuff very early, and I would hear that they had other plans. However, he also emphasized the previous character's MCU appearances, saying, "You can say that Daredevil is canon in the MCU. Those other events happened, but some of them we are not leading into. His one night stand with She-Hulk may be one of those things." So for anyone out there that was not a fan of the She-Hulk series, you don't have to worry about this in Daredevil Born Again. They're not even going to reference that. So the way they're going to treat Daredevil, based on his comments there, is the way they treated Wolverine in the X-Men films. In the original X-Men movies, they toned them down quite a fair bit, and then cutting to his solo projects, that's when they're going to go as crazy as they want, and they don't even have to reference the original X-Men movies if they don't want to. Now, the next big question that's on everyone's mind is what about the other defenders? What about Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, Iron Fist, Punisher? Even though we know Punisher is back in season one, what about the rest of the defenders characters? Where are they going to fit into this universe? This is what he followed up saying this, or what Windenbaum had to say about this, saying, I don't know. I want to follow the characters and see what they go. I think the two characters that are most important for Daredevil Born Again are obviously Matt Murdock and Wilson Fisk. They live and breathe in a world where these other Defenders characters are walking around somewhere, so I think collisions are inevitable. So that's him. So that's basically him confirming that yes, the Defenders are coming back. It's just a question of when they're going to come back. I'm kind of hoping it's going to happen over the course of Daredevil Born Again, and then slowly tease them out into their own shows or whatever projects we see them next in. He even got asked about Finn Jones coming back as Iron Fist in a very funny way, saying, I don't know, we'll see. Only time will tell. Even though I think we all know that Finn Jones will come back as Iron Fist and say, I'm back and I'm back with a vengeance. Next big thing that everyone's wondering about is regards to season two. What have they announced for season two? Even though we're only going to get the first two episodes of season one today, and then it's going to drop on a weekly basis. This is what the showrunner had to say about it, saying, so usually I really like to finish writing the finale after we started shooting, going for the old network model, which I grew up in. You were usually maybe three scripts ahead at best, and it's kind of really cool to see visual threads and things going on, incorporate them into the finale. So we have seven scripts locked, loaded, ready to go, but I'm still tinkering around with the final one. So that confirms they started writing season two, and also they and I think they've confirmed it's supposed to be 8 episodes total instead of nine for season two. The other thing they've confirmed about for season two is that Shaggy from Scooby-Doo himself, Matthew Lillard, is going to be part of the main cast of season two. Let me know in the comments below. Who do you want to see him play in season two of Daredevil Born Again? He's a fantastic actor, so he can pretty much play anybody, hero or villain. But let me know in the comments below, what are you most excited about to see in Daredevil Born Again? And what do you want to see them do with the Defenders going forward when they start getting all the Defenders characters back together? I think we all just want to see another Defenders TV show, even Heroes for Hire with Luke Cage and Iron Fist. Just put them in a show together. You don't even have to have separate TV shows anymore for both of them, and also see them cross over with the larger MCU, depending on the character and where they will fit best in. The other thing was, as well to mention is they've just confirmed or announced a Punisher special presentation. If you remember Werewolf by Night, they came around on Halloween couple of years back or the year before, I think. That sort of thing. So they're doing a special presentation for the Punisher after Daredevil Born Again season one, and then potentially the Punisher TV show, essentially Dead Punisher season three. But let me know in the comments below if you want me to do more videos like this, just talking about my own sort of thoughts on all the stuff that's been announced. But thank you guys so much. Don't forget to like, subscribe, check out the links below, and don't forget to comment below. What are you most excited about in Daredevil and in the future of the MCU? Don't forget this year we're going to have Thunderbolts and the new Fantastic Four movie coming out later this year, and a whole bunch of other stuff coming out later this year as well. Thank you guys so much. This is Simon signing off. Happy 10 years, everybody. Goodbye for now.